to another. Tonight, we have a special guest, Dr. Marlon Johnson. Dr. Marlon Johnson has a doctorate of education from Northcentral University. In 2018 is when he got this degree. It's in educational leadership. He's the author of two books, Discriminating Cultures, Staying Non-Existent, and Freedom, Choice, and Responsibility, the inspiration of the next generation of Blacks in America, and he taught secondary English language arts from grades 6 through 12 since 2004. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Dr. Marlon Johnson. Dr. Johnson, how are you this evening?
I'm feeling fantastic. How are you doing, Mr. King?
I'm doing just excellent. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very, very blessed to be here. I'm very excited and I'm ready. Let's do it.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to your bio other than what was read?
Wow. I am a loving husband. Hello to my wife, Lucky. Um, big shout out to my daughters, Amina, Imani, and Marley Rainbow. Um, Big shout out to my moms and my sisters, Amanda and Paige. List goes on. I'm a family man. I'm an educator, a scholar, author. I mean, list goes on and on. I'm just very humble. I'm just very blessed to be here.
Well, that's great. I'm glad that you're here. And as you and I discussed prior to your coming on the show, when I was trying to get you to come to the show, we discussed that America in Black and White is about developing the underserved communities, the Black minority communities, giving voice to those that don't have a voice, and to also have teaching moments for those that are listening to the show, because we welcome all to the show. But we're primarily going to do what's necessary to build these communities to make sure everybody has resources that they need. And so what was intriguing for me to ask you to come to the show is that you have a lot that I think is some things that that people that are watching will really need to know and get to know where you're coming from and the things that you've done and what you're contributing to the communities. So from that perspective, can you just start out by telling us what inspired you to pursue your PhD in counselor education and supervision at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville?
Well, North Central University was the name of the college. I earned a degree online. It was originally based in Arizona, and if I'm correct, it's based now in San Diego.
Okay.
Also, and all of my colleagues always get on me about it, a PhD is different from an EDD. So I have an educational doctorate. So hence the title, I am Marlon L. Johnson, EDD. So, just it's a little bit of clarification. It's kind of a distinction without a difference, but it's very, very important, the title. Well, but to answer your question in terms of my love for education, it's ironic. I never thought about becoming a teacher. When I became a teacher, ironically, I was unmarried, no kids. So I never had experience with children at all. And if I could tell you a quick story, if I can afford the time. I remember it was February 2004. It was the first day of subbing. My mentor, one of my best friends, was teaching at an all-boys juvenile facility in Pahokee, Florida, which is, I think, about 30 to 45 minutes west of West Palm Beach near Belgrade, Florida. And he encouraged me to come to West Palm Beach. I graduated from Florida A&M University with my undergrad in political science back in 2001. So I was kind of in no man's land in terms of what I really wanted to do in terms of career. So he was like, well, come on down to West Palm. There's more opportunities. Give it a shot. So basically, I moved in with him to be a roommate. And at the end of the day, I needed a job. So he was like, well, Marlon, go sub. And I'm like, when I was a kid, subbing was a no-go, back in the day. It was kind of like an easy target, easy day. But to make a long story short, I remember my first day. I was in the media center, and I
Mhm.
had my sub packet, and I was terrified. I did not know what was next. And there was a second grader that came up to me, and she said, "Are you the sub?" And my first thought was the next answer is going to determine the rest of my life. And I looked down at her and I was like, "Yeah." She looked at me and she was like, "Oh, you cool. I got you. I got you." And the entire day, she was like my eyes and ears as far as lesson plans, keeping the kids in line so I didn't have any real misbehaving. And I remember uh, teachers just looking in the classroom. And at the end, I was called into the office and I'm thinking, oh man, this is not good. But they told me, normally when we go into that classroom with a sub, it's a chaos, it's a disaster.
Mhm.
Actually, you managed the class very well. And I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, they just liked me, so I just did my job. They was like, no, you don't understand. Do you have a degree in education? I'm like, no. Okay, that's understandable. What you did was this, display good classroom management. Have you ever decided, ever think about teaching? And I was like, I don't have any kids. I never really, my mom taught, my grandma, she's a retired teacher.
Mhm.
And it was like, well, it seemed like it's in the blood. Maybe you should give it a try. What's your favorite subject? Well, I like to read, write, and speak. ELA. Why don't you give it a try? Why don't you, go into a classroom and just give it a whirl? So I remember it was, I think it was 2004. I think it was Hurricane Francis, like a whole bunch of hurricanes that hit Central Florida. I mean, Central South Florida. And so they had a couple of openings, while they was looking for a teacher, but they needed a permanent sub.
Mhm.
So I managed to go, I think it was the Woodlands Middle School in Lake Worth, and I, just was the temporary sub in that class. And
Mhm.
there I just began to go to different teachers, pluck their brains to learn how to lesson plan, connect with the students, which I was gifted in. I don't know where it came from.
Mhm.
And in the end, when the new teacher came in, a lot of the students were very, very upset. They're like, Mr. Johnson, we like you. We was learning. Why are you leaving? And I
Mhm.
was like, well, you have another teacher. I was here for a time. It's all good. And then I went and taught briefly as a reading teacher at Lake Central High School. Did pretty well, and then I just matriculated from there. Um, but that's when I knew that teaching was for me, and I just noticed how students listened
Mhm.
and they wanted to learn. I've had students say, "Well, how is this going to help me in the real world?" And I always tell them, "Look, if I sign you to a 6-year, $60 million deal, and here's the contract, you can't read, you don't know the main idea, you don't know the comparison contrast to another contract, you don't know uh, the cause and effects and the ramifications of that contract, and you don't have an inference or a source to fall back on. So you don't have reading comprehension of this contract, but you hire me to do it. So now I can read your contract, manipulate your contract to benefit me. So instead of you getting $60 million deal, you may just get 4 or 5, maybe, and I'll take the rest. How would you feel? Oh, we'll hate you, Mr. Johnson. But why would you hate me? You didn't read the contract. You trusted me with your livelihood. What would your wife or your husband think about that one day
Wow.
when you decide to have it? And or Barry, how would your mom feel?
Mhm.
Oh, she'll be pissed. Exactly. Welcome to English class. Turn the page, such and such. So teaching just became a mentorship. It became a tutoring. It became life skills, all under the Florida State standards, and that's where I thrive to this day. I'm currently a ninth, 10th grade reading teacher at Gaston County High School in Havana, Florida. The students love me. Um, I get on them a lot, but at the same time, they're very respectful. They do their work, and they're freshmen, and a little bit of sophomores, but they really, really have the want and the drive to excel. So I know I've been a little bit long-winded, but that was basically how I tripped and stumbled into becoming an educator.
Oh no, that's all good. We definitely appreciate that. So can you tell us from that experience up to now, what happened in between? As far as your career goes and the things that you've done that has actually impacted not just your teaching but the community and society today. What are some of the things that you have done?
Um, Indirectly, I
Mhm.
have in my 20 years, I've had students come out of nowhere. And students, 2004, now these former students are now grown with families of their own. I remember 2 years ago, I was at a bank, Truist Bank, and I was just, getting ready to pay bills. And across the street was this group of guys who were just staring at me. And I'm like, okay, maybe they're just waiting, in line, waiting for me to finish or whatever. So, I'm doing my thing, but I kept watching my back. So they were just staring, laughing and whatever. And I was like, okay, let me finish this up and see what's going on. So I walked up to the car and I was like, I apologize for taking so long, just to see what was going on. And they was like, you don't remember me, do you? I'm like, no, we was in your English and writing class. We was, goofing around or whatever, but you really, really, really got on our case and made us really do our work, and we've done very well. And you was our favorite teacher. So indirectly, I'm responsible for impacting a student's life for the positive. And I hear that all the time. To this day, I have letters. I still have thank you cards. So uh, my impact has been more indirect. And then when I talk to fellow teachers, that's how you know that you're a good teacher. It isn't really the teacher evaluations or what you think you've done with your lesson plans. It's more of the teacher, of the children, excuse me, the students and the parents that come up and say thank you. So that really means a lot in terms of our communities. Just to be a role model, just to be someone of a, I don't want to say an influencer. It's not social media, but to be a positive influence or a role model for these young children, because now they're now becoming adults, and now I know that they're passing on good values to their children or even into their communities as well.
So can you tell me how did you decide that you would become an author and write books? I mean, what was the transition from education into being an author?
um it was funny. It was based on a debate over Colin Powell.
Oh,
It was very interesting. um so my friend, my mentor, his name is Sundiata. um we had this big debate about uh African Americans in leadership. And I guess in the debate, I brought up Colin Powell, and I was saying, I guess along the lines at the time of, we need to give President Bush credit. At least he put, a black man in a powerful position, because at the time, General Powell was the Secretary of State, if I was correct.
mhm.
So my friend, who is really, really big in Black philosophy, Black upliftment, Black culture, uh, he saw my love for the Black community, but he felt it was a bit misguided. So he gave me a book, and it was called Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery by Dr. Naeem Akbar.
Mhm.
This is my favorite book, well, one of my two favorite books on the planet.
Mhm.
This really amplified my teaching, because I was introduced to the difference between indoctrination and education.
Mhm.
And of course, indoctrination basically is just brainwashing, just filling a cup or whatever liquid you want, and knowing that they're going to drink it if they're thirsty enough, versus education, where, you know, a deuce means to take out and pull something out.
Mhm.
So, so he was like, look, read this book and then come back and talk to me. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna win this debate. At the time I loved the debate, probably still do. And I read the book, and it was like 50 pages long, and it changed my entire life. It changed everything. It was like everything, every question I had in terms of Black history, modern culture, and even for the future, it was answered in this book. And basically, it was kind of like Star Wars, you know, with Yoda. You have to unlearn what you have learned to
Right.
relearn.
Mhm.
So when I read the book, I started going out into the real world, and everything, it's like the book just came to life in real time, and it changed my whole perception. So when I went to the classroom, a lot of the classrooms I've been in have been predominantly African American and Latinos, definitely minorities. So I just became very passionate about that, and really, you know, and reinforcing the importance of education and how to, get them to think for themselves. Because they always say, "Well, what do you think, Dr. Johnson or Mr. Johnson?" And I'm like, "What I think doesn't matter." Or if they're writing an essay, "What do you think? Does it sound right? This, and that, and the other?" I always tell them, "Look, I can't tell you how to think or how you feel. You have to tell me, but be ready to back it up with citing textual evidence."
Mhm.
So you're able to think for yourself. And a lot of students were like, "Okay, Mr. Johnson, hey, thank you, because I should hang around with friends." And I thought I always knew it wasn't a good idea to hang out with them. But now that I'm able to think for myself, I'm able to do what my mama said. And I thought it was boring, but it actually helped out. So the book did a phenomenal job in such a few pages on explaining the importance of letting us know that slavery was not just on our wrists or our ankles or our neck or wherever the case may be. It was here, and it was a hard form of limitation. One of my favorite movies of all time. It wasn't a mainstream success, but it was what it was. It was with Cuba Gooding Jr. and Sir Anthony Hopkins. It was called Instinct.
Mhm.
It was a very good film, and it was basically about Sir Anthony Hopkins, going to jail because he was on an expedition in Africa, but that's a whole different story. But Cuba Gooding's character was a psychiatrist that they became friends, blah blah blah. Good film. But to make a long story short, near the climax of the film, they were there where a gorilla was being shipped in a cage, and the gorilla was totally broken, like so broke that if you open like when you open up the cage, and I think Hopkins opened up the cage, and Cuba Gooding's character told him not to, but when he opened up the cage, the gorilla was so defeated that he just sat there. He didn't want to jump out. He didn't want to beat anybody up. He didn't want to get free. But he was so broken mentally that it just was what it was. So when it comes to education, I want that to be the spark and the flame to open the minds of our children, because again, our children, their goal is to be adults, and
Mhm.
our goal is to lead the way. But we don't want to hit that glass ceiling, which is ignorance or indoctrination,
Right.
because again, they will shrink back down to that infant mindset that causes a lot of the statistical problems that we have today. We
Mhm.
want them to shatter the mold and take it to the zenith.
Mhm.
So basically, I can talk about this book all day. I'm not going to, but it really, this book plays a major role in my mission for education. It's not just to help kids get degrees or diplomas; it's for them to become educated and let them know that even I always tell my students, I'm Dr. Marlon Johnson, but I can burn my degrees today, but I'm still heavily educated, and I'm able to think for myself, and I'm able to inspire others to do the same. Now, some people may say that's inspirational, some people may say that's dangerous. That depends on your point of view. But
Mhm.
that is a major impact on how I benefit the community.
Wow. See, that's wonderful that you were at that time. It sounds like you were teaching critical thinking.
Yes,
And
sir.
that's what a lot of these kids today, they do not critically think because they've taken that away from them, and it's basically making them like very robotic.
Definitely.
Now, as we elevate this conversation, let's move to this next level as to your books, the books that you've written. Tell us, how is it that your books have impacted what you think would be the great learned part for society today? What are the name of your books, and tell us how did that come to be?
Um, it was funny. I'll start with my first book, and if my friend Suniata is watching, I am going to change the cover. But but this is my first book. It's called DCSN, Discriminating Culture Staying Non-Existent. Now, for full disclosure, the real title of the book is in chapter 9. Why did I change it? It could be a bit controversial. But discriminating culture staying non-existent basically just talks about how far we have come in our society, especially in the African American culture, with diversity, with integration, and all of that great feats. But we still have a long way to go, going back to emancipating our minds, rediscovering our cultures, and going beyond Black History Month. Um, the book is I've had friends read it, and even though it's 50 pages, I've been told it's a very good book, but it's an intense read. And as you mentioned, Mr. King, it is critical thinking, but it digs deeper and it talks about social issues. And again, anyone who has an open mind is a constructive criticism.
Right.
If you don't have an open mind, then it's why are you going after us? Why are you racist? Why are you this and that and the other? And that's not what I am. And again, I'm not going to sit here and have the I'm not racist speech, but
Right.
again, I am for the growth and elevation of my people, especially the youth.
Right.
So with DCSN, I I I hold myself accountable every day, and I always pride myself in holding myself accountable. So if I make a mistake, I'm gonna say, you know what, my bad. If I'm right, I'm stubborn. I'm going down on the sword on it. But if I'm wrong, you got me. Let me learn from it, add it to my repertoire, onward, forward, onward, and forward. Um, and with DCSN, it just asks our community to do the same. We pride ourselves in lots of successes, but we got to own our L's. This may sound controversial, but I'm going to go there. Is racism, white supremacy the cause for our problems? Yes. But is Black miseducation or the miseducation of the Negro? If it's the miseducation of us, are we blamed for the effects? Yes. Because again, we have the ability to build our own economics. We have the ability to build our own schools. We have our ability to provide positive images for not only for young boys but young girls to see. And again, my main focus is the young boys because my wife, I let her have that in terms of uplifting the young girls and the young women. She's phenomenal with that. So I stay in my lane. But again, 1+1 is 2, 2+2 = 4. But if we come together, we will thrive forevermore. That rhymes. I just made it up, but it is what it is. So we're still a discriminated culture. We're still non-existent. But at the same time, we can't ignore the good things we have come across. But at the same time, we have to do a better job of improving our communities. I'll put it this way. And a friend of mine said this the other day, a good brother. We have to do a better job of celebrating Black History Month the same way we celebrate Cinco de Mayo and St. Patrick's Day. If we can go, and I'm not advocating get drunk and belligerent, but I'm saying we need to have more pride for our cultures the way we do for everybody else's cultures, and we can go from there.
Well, that's very interesting, and that's also very thought provoking because we have a lot of people, especially people that look like you and I, that I don't know if it's to say that they've given up on the culture, but in not being as supportive, it seems like there's a lot of negativity that comes towards the community from people that look like us. Why do you think that's so?
Well, again, that goes back to mental slavery. We were taught to always think the worst of each other. One of my favorite books, and I was going to leave it out, but one of my favorite books was by Dr. Bobby E. Wright. He was a clinical psychologist, and he wrote a book called The Psychopathic Racial Personality. And in his book, he pretty much hinted, I'll paraphrase because I don't have the book with me, that we've been trained that if a certain group calls us the N-word, we'll get mad, we'll curse them out, we may beat them up. But if we give our own people just a stare, instead of saying, what are you looking at? We're just going to get a gun and get it over with. So we have been trained to see the worst in ourselves the bottom barrel of ourselves and sees ourselves as expendable. And then it doesn't help that we got social media. Before that, there was TV, things of that nature, which gave us the negative myths, stereotypes, and propaganda that pretty much told us that we're not ish or whatever. I'm like,
Hey, I
forgive
got
me. So if it's like the old saying, my mom has a degree in psychology, and she always said, if you call somebody a name, long enough or most enough, you're going to believe it. So me, I'm big on praise. Like my students at Gaston County, I get on them all the time. I tell them, look, you walk around with this "I wish I would" attitude, but if I give you some praise, you look at me as if I'm just some weirdo on the street asking you for $1. So I told them, look, I'll be the villain, but I'll be the villain giving you praise when you deserve it. Mm-hmm. And throughout the school year, now they begin to say thank you, or I appreciate you, or let me help you with the door, or let me help you with the seat, and things of that nature. So they come from environments where they may not be told this, but the environment is so toxic and so bottom base that's how they feel. That's what they're programmed. It's like the gorilla, and I'm not saying we're gorillas, but it goes back to the movie about how is this big strong gorilla who could easily get out of this cage with his door open and cause havoc just sit there broken. So I mean, toxic environments and toxic behavior creates toxic results, and that also goes back to lack of education, lack of knowledge of self, lack of love of self, lack of belief in self. I tell my students all the time, you can speak your truth in my classroom as long as you're prepared to hear me tell you the truth. It is a difference. And so when it comes to the supposed genocide of our people, it begins with the menocide. If you don't believe you're supposed to be here, you're going to now transfer that to other people. It's like hurting people. Again, it's very toxic. So it goes back to my form of education. I don't want my kids just knowing ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. I want them to graduate knowing that, hey, I'm a strong, in this case, again, I'm all for every culture, but this is Black History Month. This is our people. I want young Black boys and girls to grow up to be strong Black young men and young women, because one day I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. They're going to be inspiring them.
Right.
So we got to break the cycle. We got to break the chains. And in some environments, they may not be as blessed in that. So, but then again, that's why teachers and mentors and coaches are also very important that looks like us.
Well, so also, just so you know, you don't have to worry about, what you're saying and how you're expressing yourself. All is well. We're not on one of those little boxes that go. No, we ain't doing that. So this is all about real, and these are things that I think people need to know. But let me just ask you this, because it sounds like when you're talking about people being products of their environment, and specifically where we got some of our neighborhoods for people that are Black that look like you and I, where it's worse than what worse can be.
Right.
And so when you get to that extent, how do we actually get to the point of actually changing that mindset? Because that mindset is something that, when they say people learn a cycle, it's hard to break a cycle. So if they've been doing it for so long, how do we change that?
That leads you to my second book, Freedom, Choice, Responsibility. Look, okay. For example, when I think of mental slavery, I think of codependency. Now, in a codependent relationship, it's easy to blame the abuser, whether it's alcohol, whether it's a batterer, or whatever the case may be. I'm not a psychologist, but it's just we use that as an educational example. Now, once you admit that the bottle is the problem, or this abusive person is the problem, then they're no longer the problem. Who's the problem now? That other individual. That's intervention. It has to be a choice. I can come in all day long. It could be in the hood. It could be in the suburbs. It could be in a penthouse. Everybody has their story. But once you tell me your story, What are you going to do about it? We can give you all the resources in the world, and there's so much. My mom always says the literature is out there, the help is out there. That's why I hate when people play the victim. And I always tell my students, you're not a victim or a sympathetic figure. Accept your responsibility. You have the freedom to accept, you have the freedom and the choice to accept responsibility. Once you do those three things, everything else will take care of itself. And when it comes to mental side of our people, we have adopted a fatalistic mentality. We feel like we're just trapped in that cage, going back to that gorilla analogy from Instinct. But again, once we provide you the light, it's on you. A lot of athletes come from very disadvantaged backgrounds. Right. They could have stayed and fell apart, but those coaches told them, look, get your grades, go to Florida State, go to Florida, go to Georgia, go to Texas. Get up out of here. And then when you get to the league, get your family out. Take the challenge. Or if you're not an athlete, you can go to college, get a degree. I always tell my students, you don't care about school now, but when you graduate, look out in the crowd and look at your mama, your grandmama, your aunties, your uncles, and look at all the water faucet pouring out of their faces. Because those were the sacrifices they made for you. And what I mean for you is the students, of course.
Right.
And when they think of things beyond themselves and they see it, it's kind of like hope is like a small little hole. It looks small. You feel like you can't get into it. But if you want that hope to get bigger, kind of like a rat or a rodent, you're going to nibble at that hole to the point that it's going to be big enough for you to go in. And once you go through that hope and you see how beautiful hope is, you're not going back. As a matter of fact, if you go back, your peers are going to resent you because you had the opportunity to do better for yourself and inspire them to find their own way. Or even if they want to stay, at least you got out. So when it comes to our people, we have the freedom, choice, and responsibility to be that inspiration for the next generation of Blacks in America. Yes, we are a discriminating culture staying non-existent, but we're not stupid niggas. Behavior is something we can control. And so we can't blame the white man for everything, and I'm not absolving them because history has already got that on lock. But at the end of the day, we can't always play the victim and say, oh, it's always them. Do you? We have the history of showing African Americans who had less than what we had. They didn't have social media in the 1800s. They didn't have any of the luxuries we had during the Jim Crow era, but what they did have was cities. They had a Black Wall Street. They had their own, inventors. They had it all. So, and what stopped them was just a racist systemic society. Why can't we have that again? So it's not that we can't. The question is, do we want it bad enough? And again, that's where in my realm, education is very important, both in and out of the classroom.
So with education, and we're talking about accountability, what more can we add to that formula to basically to try to delve into those people that are stuck? Because a lot of people are actually stuck. Okay. With them being stuck, it's like they need a whole bunch of things to get them up and to get them moving. Besides accountability, what else can we add to that to make it easier and better for people?
Well, again, self-determination and handouts are two different things. And there's so many things we can do. And I tell my students this every day. There's so many things we can do at the high school to help them. The one good thing about our principal, Ms. Chelsea Franklin, she makes it a point about, hey, life doesn't end after high school. You have the military, you have trade school, you have college, you have options. And we've always had options. I had a student a long time ago, without going to specifics, but let's say his dad was in the life, but his goal was to keep his son from being in the life. But his son was good with numbers. And at one point, he had the son help him measure out the numbers and make sure that the balance was tilled and all that, whatever. But his dad was like, I want him in STEM. He should not be on the streets doing illegal things when he could be at the FAMU College of Pharmacy learning it the right way and making a right living and a right wage, for him and one day his family.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a 1-2 thing. It's not, my focus is not tangible, it's intangible. My concern for our people is intangible. I tell my students all the time, you're in reading comprehension class, not because you can't read or you struggle with reader, it's because you're lazy, you blame others, you wait to the last minute, or you're just totally inept to motivation. That's intangible. I can give you the stars, the moons, and the sky, but if you don't want it bad enough. I have one student who's a Kobe Bryant fan. Rest in peace to Kobe. I'm a Kobe fan, and we were the same age. I have a Mamba book on the bookshelf, and I get on this case about, he always say, well, I'll do my work tomorrow, or I'll that, making excuses. And I'm like, wait a minute, but you said you're a Kobe Bryant fan. That's not the Mamba mentality. The Mamba mentality is show up, work hard, listen, leave class, repeat 7 times, go home, keep working, come back, rinse, wash, and repeat. That's my mindset. I have another student who's a LeBron James fan, and I treat him like LeBron James. And LeBron James is very demanding. He's not afraid to get a coach fired. He's not afraid to get a player traded. But he's also not afraid to bring you on if he believes you can help him get to achieve his goals. So and I mean, Jordan's the GOAT, but I do give LeBron credit. He does give opportunities to players to become great, to become a champion. But if you're not getting the job done, don't get mad when he goes to the front office and says, you got to go, because it's an intangible thing, if that makes sense. So it's not that we can't. It's, will you, and do you have the heart and the guts to get it done? So I admit, sometimes in class, I'm the cool teacher. Other times, I ain't gonna lie, I'm an asshole. And I'm not an asshole because I'm a jerk. I'm an asshole because I hold them to maximum accountability. And sometimes accountability is a jagged little pill that's tough to swallow.
Yeah, we got a lot of folks that don't like accountability. They don't like accountability because that means that, one, if you're not doing your part, you're gonna get called out. That's plain and simple. So, can you share your experience and insights regarding recruitment from African American males within the master's level counseling programs as explored in your dissertation?
Repeat the question one more time. I'm sorry.
Can you share your experiences and insights regarding recruitment from African American males within master's level counseling programs as explored in your dissertation?
Well, my dissertation was an educational course, and my dissertation was on the efficacy of paying mentors. Basically, mentors, is a job that, at once upon a time it was free. Now some mentors are actually paid. In terms of African Americans, the students that I spoke to, I did my interview at Florida State, so I had more of a diverse sample of students.
Okay.
But I did have some African Americans, young students, partake in the interview. Very bright. I earned my degree in 2018, so they pretty much have graduated, and I'm going to assume they're doing very well for themselves. But I'm trying to answer your question, but but in terms of what I studied and your question, we're kind of conflicting, so I'm just kind of
okay. Well, as best as you can explain it, that's fine and dandy.
Right.
I understand.
Right, but to talk about my dissertation, it was a great experience. The thing I remember most about the dissertation was me arguing about why mentors should be paid. Because like teaching is not an easy job. And I remember a young brother, I forgot his name. He's a great brother. He was a director of the program. I have his name in my phone, and it's my fault. I apologize if you're watching, but he did a great job of helping me get in to be in a position to interview. So that's one of the things I definitely remember from the experience. I wish I knew his name because he deserves a shout out. But he's a good brother, and that's an example of reaching back and helping your brothers help. Iron sharpens iron. So everything is cyclical. So with my dissertation, I just wanted to give a shout out to all the mentors who have reached out and helped these students. And matter of fact, the students were working at Pineville Elementary, which is right down the street from me. It's a predominantly black school. Um, I won't say they're disadvantaged. They're growing learners, but they do remind me a lot of Lincoln Elementary in Riviera Beach. Um, they're great kids, but relative to maybe the more affluent schools here in Tallahassee, you will say it's one of the lower schools. But at the same time, it's very very good. But the point is that it is good because we have Florida State students go there and mentor and help students, become the best version of themselves or begin the process of the best version of themselves. So when they go to middle school, they can go from there and grow into high school, so on and so forth. So I know I didn't answer your question, but I would say that the doctoral mentorship played a very major role in my mission into helping my people as well as helping other people. I always said when it comes to black people, we're the vanguard because even though a lot of people, want to treat us like the N word, we are the front runners in terms of helping making other cultures and other people's better. That is a fact.
Before there's some main things I want to get to, but I want to follow up on that because that's a very good point, a very valid point you just made. Um, from building this country to being all of the things that we were. Why do you think that most of our people still have yet to? It seems like they don't understand that being an original king or queen, building this country that they call America, and having everything still taken away from you, you not get no recognition, but everything you get is taken. But you're not doing what's necessary to get it back. Is there something that's like missing in between these points that maybe people are not seeing, or they just missed the whole boat? Well, I mean, what happened?
A number of things. Number one, some people, and it's a human thing, not just a black thing, but we'll keep it Afrocentric. For some black people, they just don't care. You could tell them the sky is blue, prove the sky is blue, and they just don't give a shit. I'm sorry for the language. They just don't care. It just is what it is. Um, we live in a very materialistic society. We've been trained to love another culture's object of value. Um, you know, we've been taught that the object of value is material. If you don't have the material, if you don't have the Mercedes or the big house on the biggest hill, a limousine a mile long with either men or women, whatever the proclivities that you lustfully desire, that you're nobody. Or if you don't have the Tommies or the Versace's or whatever, then who are you? We're a society where we left at Steve Urkel. I got into a debate with a good brother over Steve Urkel, because his argument was, oh, he's a minstrel show and he's a stereotype with a stereotypical nerd outfit or whatever. My thing was, number one, he got the girl. He had self-respect. He ran the show, wherever the case may be, and he always provided a great lesson. So he may have looked like a stereotype, but he had substance. And on the show, he loved Laura so much that he betrayed his knowledge of self and became Stefan Arkell. So he betrayed who he was for her.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, she loved Steve and always did. She just loved what she thought Steve should be, which was Stefan Arkell. So everything that glitters isn't gold, as Laura found out. But at the same time, when you have media, with hip hop, whatever happened to Black Star? What happened to Common? Whatever happened to MC Light? The LL Cool J's, the Cool Modis who talked about, or KRS Ones, or Dead Press, or who I have on my wall. I met Dead Press, and you know, they talked about the very things I talk about: knowledge of self, um, preserving our communities, you know, having a higher mindset, thinking with the higher chakra instead of the lower chakra, things of that nature. Is that on TV? No. Is that on social media? No. Is that on the radio? No. You know, but when I turn it on, it's sex, drugs, and violence. You know, at least when I was growing up, you know, 20 years ago, you know, for every, you know, gangster rap or sexually charged albums, you know, in our hip hop discography, we had the conscious music, we had the balance. So now conscious hip hop is gone, conscious reggae is gone, but we still have dance hall, and we still have, you know, whatever they have today. You know, the kids call it drill rap, some kids call this strip hop, whatever. But that just tells me that, do we have full control over the major music outlets? No. You know, the good news is now with social media, as you have proven, we don't need major outlets to produce our content. You know, I don't need a major outlet, you know, to produce books. You know, I could just sit home one day and just type, go create a cover, and the rest is history, and do our own things. So again, as I mentioned before, we have the freedom, choice, responsibility to do our own things. Do we want to? There are some brothers that can go get their own house, but they're living with their mom. There are some women who can do their own thing, but they're doing their own thing. Like I said, I don't want to bring all that up. But when you look at it, our people, we could do more, but do they want to do it enough? So it's not something that they're missing or they're not seeing. They don't want to see it. How do I know? I see the children every day. The children is not just a product of the environment or their parents, it's the product of the adults. As I said, the incline bump go down. So if they don't see enough positivity around them, and all they see is negative myths, stereotypes, and propaganda, and I don't want to go in circles with it, but it's all relative, then what else are they going to do? And what else they're going to see? But when you give them the alternative, are they going to be that gorilla that's going to bust through that cage and wreak havoc and create his own destiny? Or is he going to be that gorilla that sits back and is defeated? That goes back to knowledge of self. That goes back to here. So at the end, I always tell adults, even the students, this is on you. You can't. It's like lean on me. What did Joe Clark say? If you fail, don't blame your parents. Don't blame the white man. Blame you. And that's the first thing we need to do, because we can't blame the white man forever. We got to do something. And I think this is the best time now. But it's a choice that we as a people have to make. Like I said, I can go on forever with that. We can go on.
So let's talk about the real thing. Let's talk about Black history. And I want you to tell me, from your knowledge and understanding of what happened historically with our culture, why is it that we don't have another Black Wall Street?
Because we don't want it bad enough. Black people, as a people, we do have money. We do have a GDP. Again, we're in a society in which our object of value is material. Our object of value in reality is the enhancement of mind, body, and spirit. We're a spiritual people. That's why we're the most emulated. That's why we're the most duplicated. We are ordained with that levels of intangibles. So we know how to make any style look good. We know how to make any music. We can go to country. We can go to rock. We can go to any genre and make it hot. Lil Wayne has proven that, for example. Eminem, they love Eminem, but Eminem gives credit to Black people. Not because he's afraid of being called racist, but he knows where the bread is buttered. He knows that on his poster walls, if he had one, were black people. His crew was all black. So we are the vanguard. So the fact that we don't have a black Wall Street, it that could happen at any time. Also, that's step one. We have people who are deaf, dumb, and blind. Two, we have people who want what the white man's got. You know, I always said, do I want a great life for my wife and kids? Of course. I love to have a nice house, nice cars, a nice life for them. Of course. But I don't want to be a bougie guy. I don't want to be, honestly, I don't want to be black bourgeoisie. I'm the guy that's t-shirt, jeans, hanging out. Now, can I dress up and pull it off? Yes. But my thing is more casual. But at the same time, there are people who want to be uppity. They want to be bougie. And am I dissing them? No. Live your best life. Just like if they want to be deaf, dumb, and blind, and they want to be in that status quo of self-destruction, that's their life. That's the American way. But at the same time, you have one group that's stuck in self-destruction. You got one group trying to be something they're not. And then you have this other group who really wants to make a difference. But the bad news is, statistically, that's maybe 5% at best. So the other 95% is just one's lost in the wilderness. The other one is going the wrong path in the wilderness, and one sees the path home. It's like a burning building. If the building is burning, you can tell. I can tell Mr. King, hey, I smell smoke. The fire's burning. You could be like, man, hey, forget all the stuff around here. I'm out. My life is most important.
Right.
Or Mr. King can say, hey, look, man, hey, I smell the smoke too, man, but I need to get my worldly possessions, man. Hey, without my Rollie, without my Versace, whatever, man, I'm lost. I can't get and then risk getting burned down trying to get all these possessions that you can always replace. Mm-hmm. Or you could be the person saying, you know what? I don't even believe you, Johnson, man. You're full of it, man. Why don't you go get a fire extinguisher and pull that and put it out, man? I'm asleep, man. I'm deep sleep in my own world. Again, you can't make people do what they don't want to do. That's just a part of life. And that goes back to breaking the chains. Some people in slave days, like Django, Stephen, happy to be the house nigga. And that's just the reality. He knew what was going on was wrong. He knew that freedom wasn't free, but freedom was out there. But he was rather to get the white man's candy's approval, knowing how evil he was, than for him to have love of self and go and create a new life for himself. So it's kind of like the Matrix. You have the red pill and the blue pill.
Oh boy.
You got to make your choice. And some people will take the blue pill, stay in their sleep, and just let life go, la-di-da, la-di-da. Breaking the chains was my red pill moment. And I began to see the Matrix as what it was. So when I talk to people, is it the most popular? No. When people see me, is it, oh, that's Marlon, he's fun, you got to invite him to a party? No. Am I always nice and polite? No. But at the same time, I do my best to keep it real because I cannot unsee what I see. But that was a decision I made. So the reason why there's no Black Wall Street, there are more people that took the blue pill or have not taken any pill at all than they are taking the red pill.
So with today's society, this is going to be a very interesting opinion that I want from you. With today's society, what do you think W.E.B. Du Bois would be saying about civilization today?
My question is it before or after he made the decision to go to Ghana?
After Ghana.
I think non-verbally he'll be just like this.
Definitely a moment.
He would shake his head. Because remember, prior to that, he was part of the Talented Tenth. From what I read, he wanted what the white man had. He was part of the black
And he
bourgeoisie.
was going to get it.
He was going to get it.
Yeah.
So he was, again, one group of people did not take any pill, which is the same as the blue pill. One person took the blue pill, and then there's others that took the red pill. So when he decided to take the red pill and go to Ghana, he's like, dang, when I took the red pill, I never imagined it will become like this. I mean, the blue pill, I never mentioned it will become like this. And now that I have the red pill, I definitely didn't believe it will become like this. But again, with Mr. Du Bois, I think, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, I think it is like, damn, look what the hate produced.
So, remember how divide and conquer really screwed the African culture or African American culture, whichever you want to call it. Why do you think we still have such a major divide between black men and black women?
Oh, wow. The answer is almost cyclical. Here. It's, again, when, whether people want to debate that the William Lynch letter is real or not is irrelevant. The content is what we need to pay attention to. And it's all about divide and conquer. Mm-hmm. It's really simple strategy. Mm-hmm. If we are the first men and women on this planet, mm-hmm. that means we were the first alphas. We were the top of the line. Mm-hmm. So if you're the alpha and you're at the top of the heap, that means someone else got to be beta. That they got to be lesser. Mm-hmm. So just using my words carefully, but so if you are a rival, because race has two definitions, it's either a competition or a unification. Mm-hmm. We already know that racism and white supremacy is not about unification. Because on a zero-sum game, physically, we're better. Look at sports. Science, we're better. That goes back into history. Now, they may have taken that from us and tried to whitewash the history, but if you really study, basically with Black History Month, we're better. Spiritually, white people come to our churches. I've seen it and enjoyed a Black experience at a church than going back to their little, whatever church they go to. So we're spiritually better. We're on a higher level. There are people culture vulturing hip hop and R&B, but why are you going after a genre that people once called a fad when they have country and everything else? Oh, I get it, because we got the flavor. So instead of competing, you got to mimic, assimilate, conquer, and kill, which is in freedom, choice, and responsibility. It goes back to the psychopathic racial personality. All you have to do is give people the illusion that your ice is colder and their water is warm, when in reality, we got the cold water without the ice, and their ice is their water is manufactured and overrated because of the ice. Mm-hmm. So if you give that psychotic role reversal, and again, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm an educator, but if you miseducate people into believing that what you're doing right is wrong and what the wrong is right, and you confuse them all to nothing, and you twist their minds and confuse them enough, you can take advantage of them while they're down. And then you got to add on violence, abuse, torture. We can go to all the horrifications, and what you come out with is a miscarriage of justice and a horrification of humanity. And so in the end, what we see is a group of people who should be building Black Wall Street, but they're glorifying the hood. Instead of glorifying Black Wall Street, they're glorifying a penthouse that they don't even own, or if they own it, it's in a gentrified side of town.
Yes.
Or we have brothers and sisters like Dr. Amos N. Wilson, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, Dr. Akbar, Dr. Kunjufu, Dr. Francis Crutch Wilson. Hey, Even Dr. Johnson telling you that there are alternatives to build our own Wall Street. But why should we entertain that when everything else is already ready made for us? Or who are you to tell us this anyway? So it's all in the mind. It's always in the prisons of their mind. So it always comes back to education and inspiring young people. Because once you're grown, you're pretty much set in your ways. I mean, like myself, I was in my early mid-20s when the light came on for me, but reading this book, I noticed that the light came on when I was 16, not 25. It was always, the force was always there.
Right.
Fortunately, I was around the right person who gave me a book to embrace that. And fortunately for me, I accepted it. And my life, because I accepted it, unmarried, no kids, I broke the black stereotype on that. So I was not, I don't have a baby mama running around here collecting child support. I don't have an ex-wife tormenting my wife and causing havoc. You know, I don't have kids over here trying to compete with my daughters. You know, I didn't, you know, biologically, I didn't have my first child until I was 41. People say, well, you old. You're right. But that was my freedom, choice, responsibility. I spent my 20s building myself, making mistakes. I spent my 30s learning how to be a professional. And now that I'm 40, I've got to the point now where I can go school to 20 and 30-year-olds and teach the teenagers. So it's all a choice. Do you want to or not? I don't want to hear any excuses. Because for some people, you know, as the kids say, I tell them all the time, you talk about that Draco. Well, once you pick up that pencil and write down that A, you flashing that money. And I tell them every day, stop flashing your money. You got people pocket watching. Well, I got something for them. I got something for you. Why don't you be like Jeff Bezos? Why don't you put your money in the bank, stack your interest, and then be worth $40 billion? Be on a point where you're so good, your wife can divorce you, take half your money, you still own Amazon, and you get your money back on those profits, and you can still get remarried. But they see Jay-Z, and big respect to Jay-Z, I'm a Jay-Z fan, but he don't got it like Jeff Bezos, because if he does the wrong thing and his endorsements freeze up, he gonna end up like Kanye.
Yep.
So the levels of wealth are very disproportionate, but if we make the decision to say, look, we're 13% of the population, but then again, if we combine as one, we can have the money, the power of a small country, which is pretty formidable, you know, on all levels. But that's a decision that we have to make. And it goes to this book, The Awakening the Natural Genius of Black Children by Dr. Amos N. Wilson. This is very important because, of course, trees just don't become trees. Once upon a time, they were a seed. So reaching out to the children is most important, and treating the children right are most important. Because my mom always said, you know, treat the children right because you never know when you need a glass of water.
Ooh, what you talking about? So, so tell me this: what is your opinion of the era where Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, James Baldwin, that period of time where they were all in this era where they were fighting for black living and freedom, and you know, just being the reform of getting away from the oppressor and building their own. You know, in that era, do you think because they wanted to be away and separate from white people that made them racist?
Well, first of all, racism is a power. It's not a cultural division. And even Brother Malcolm said that. You know, me and you cannot be racist. What power do we have to oppress another race?
Exactly.
Now, can we be biased or bigoted or prejudiced? Yes. But we don't have the power to be racist. IST means perfection. We can't perfect ourselves, much less try to or demean over ourselves rather than demeaning over others. What they promoted was not racism. It was black upliftment. You know, when we look at Latinos and they're building their communities, or for example, if you go to a Latin restaurant, my favorite restaurant here in Tallahassee is Los Compadres. It's a Latin restaurant. All I see is Latin workers, Latin owners. Are they racist? No, they keeping their money within their communities.
Right.
If you go to a Asian restaurant, predominantly Asian, are they racist? No, they keeping it within their people. You know, another favorite restaurant I have here in Tallahassee, right across from FAMU, is Olean's. If you ever come to Tallahassee, that's a great place to eat, good food. But I see black people in there because they're keeping their money within. Just because I keep my money in my house does not mean I hate my neighbors. It means I'm protecting my family and my interests. You know, the one thing that goes back to your question about why there's no Black Wall Street, with our people, and I always said this, and I'm writing my third book on this, so I'm not gonna give up too much information, but we're too emotionally fragile. And we're so emotionally fragile that we allow our feelings to trump our logical decisions. When it comes to politics and polity, or when it comes to finances, one of my favorite people on YouTube, he said this today, and he had an acronym called VIP: Values, Interest, and Polity, or policy. Those are the three things when I look at elections that black people never talk about. All we talk about is that, oh, this person's racist, or this person's dancing and shucking and jiving, or whatever, you know. And if you turn on CNN, one group of candidates is singing in a church, dancing in a church. Another person is rallying with white supremacists, whatever the case may be. But what are the values? What are the interests? What are the policies? We're not about our business. And that goes back to a couple of questions ago. That's why we don't have a Black Wall Street. Because every question that you're asking is all relative. And I know I'm giving you the same answers, but it's the same talking points that goes back to the civil rights era. Because for every Malcolm and Martin that wanted us to be uplifted in terms of values, interests, and polity, there were others that just said, look, let's just disintegrate with the white man and just try to have what the white man has, knowing that they're going to use us as a tool, and then once we're broken, they just throw us out.
Ooh, well, that's happening right now. And what goes to that is the fact of this, is that this is the interesting part of this, I think, is this whole dynamic of, you know, how they wanted to be separate. But when you separate and you start building, this any culture can build, but black culture, because when black culture starts to build and when we start to congregate and we're making power, people start dying and properties are always lost. Why do you think that's the case?
It goes back to race, competition. I mean, if you know, let's bring up the ISIS papers.
Yes.
Great book.
Yes.
If you know you are the recessive race, and I want to bring up my details in my third book when I'm not. If you know you're the recessive race, and you know that somebody else is better, and you know they're better, even if you allow them to thrive, your ego can't handle them thriving, because now it makes you look like crap. What are you going to do? You're going to enable them to be better than you? Or are you going to be so insecure that you cripple them to make you look good? Bullying 101, cutting shortcuts. So when it came to division, it was never about, oh, we hate them and we want to be separate from them. No. Why can't we have our own nation? Why can't we build within ourselves? We had something before we got here. Our ancestors had something before we got here, and it was snatched from us. Now we're here. We don't know if we're Botswanian. We don't know if we're Eritrean. We don't know if we're Ethiopian. We don't know if we're South African. We don't really know. You know, I mean, you can do ancestry.com, but the white people, they can say, I'm from Greece, or I'm French, or I'm Australian. And if hell breaks loose in America, they can split and say they're repatriated. we got to stay here, and we're Americans. It just is what it is. So we got to, basically fend for ourselves, just like every other nationality. So in the end, it goes back to freedom, choice, responsibility, because Rosewood worked until somebody lied and all hell broke loose.
Yes. And
Tulsa worked
wipe that
until
name
somebody
in Florida.
right, and Rosewood, yeah, is near Gainesville,
Mhm.
where University of Florida is.
Mhm.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was working until somebody had their feelings hurt and felt insecure and decided to bomb the place.
Mhm.
The Black Panthers were on their way to self sufficiency until J. Edgar Hoover and all of his people had a problem.
Mhm.
So, so after, like I said, after a while, if you call somebody stupid enough and beat them verbally in the head with it, because verbal abuse is up there with physical abuse, you're going to tend to believe it. And if you take somebody's pride and knowledge of self and love of self away, you can do whatever you want. So again, it's a choice. We have to make the decision. And I tell my students all the time, either you're proactive or you're reactive. And some of our people are reactive, and there's nothing we can do about it. The kids always say, don't save them. We don't want to be saved. And it's true. So help the ones that do. I'm not in the saving business. I'm in the elevation business. If you want to be great, I'm here for you. If you don't want to be saved, then you sink in the quicksand while I build a foundation on solid ground. But if you infringe on my solid ground, that's a problem.
Mhm.
And that was what I believe that Brother Malcolm's and Dr. King's philosophies were, at least when I read it, because of course I wasn't there. But reading these affirmation books, which inspired me to write my books, those are pretty much the main ideas on what I came from it. It comes down to accountability for your mindset and your behavior. I think if the behavior is modified, the rest is history.
Mhm.
We can't control what other cultures do to us if we go back to building our cultures, but we can't sit here and be afraid. We gotta at least try. And when it comes to Black businesses, we know what's out there, but let's go get it because everybody else is, and no one else is afraid. Because trust me, they can annihilate all of us and make us extinct. There will be a new N word, but a different culture, and it's next and next and next. So let's go get it. The biggest
Well,
risk is not taking one.
I say, regardless of the case, I mean, I know that those are always possibilities and those things have and they will happen probably. But I think as far as this platform goes and what I have in my mind is that I'm going to rebuild this or start the rebuilding of this culture to be as strong and as possible as it's supposed to be, as it
Right.
was originally,
Mm-hmm.
because being an original is that. And
Mm-hmm.
so until we can actually just know and just say, hey, I am an original king or queen of this world. And I am the one that set the standard. And I know what was mine and what was stolen from me. And people are still prospering from that, which doesn't allow me to go back and take that. But I can still recreate and I
Mm-hmm.
can make it better.
Right.
That is what we need to be thinking about. We
Right.
have a lot of people that do that, but we have those that have gotten within that old culture that believe that this is only for us.
Mm-hmm.
This is only for us. So everybody that try to come in, we got to block that. So they
Right.
have those Stevens, those gatekeepers in
Right.
every industry around this world.
Mm-hmm.
And so as long as they got those Stevens that are getting paid,
Mm-hmm.
they don't care about the rest of us.
Of
So we
course
have
not.
to know that if they're not supporting us, we don't need to support them.
Right. But when you are, it goes back to education versus indoctrination. One of my other favorite books is Black Skin, White Mask by Dr. Franz Fanon. And one of his quotes, and I'll paraphrase him as well. He said, "A Negro is a slave who's been allowed to assume the attitude of the master." whereas the white man is the master who allows his slaves to eat at his table. Not everybody wants to take the long and great and mighty road that you're partaking, Mr. King, that I'm partaking as well. Some people want to take shortcuts. They want what the white man's got, but they fail to realize, and I've read stories where white people will tell you, they have all the riches in the world, but underneath all that, they are miserable and they're sad, they're depressed, and they're jumping off buildings. Whereas we've seen our people have nothing and they're happier than a bird in the sky, because that is just who we are. We got to get back to the essence of who we are. And I know it sounds idealistic, but it comes down to a choice. And it goes back to what my book said. We are the masters of our destiny. We are the gatekeepers of our future. And it's up to us to either save it or watch it burn to the ground.
Exactly.
Now, the good news is that you're taking the initiative. Again, I'm taking the initiative. My wife, she has a Black-owned business. She's taking initiative. We're teaching our children to do the same thing. I have friends who are entrepreneurs. My mentor, he owns a compost business here in Tallahassee. It's Black-owned. The best man at my wedding, his father was the first Black mayor of Tallahassee. So it's there. It's just, do we want to be kings or do we want to be niggas? And that's, or my favorite book, I have tons, From Niggas to Gods, volume 1 and 2, where they talked about that as well. It's all comes down to us, and choice and behavior are two things we can control. And we can either be raggedy or we could be sophisticated. We could be ratchet or we could be elegant. That's a choice. And that just comes back to knowledge of self, because there's beauty in being Black. Whether people want to accept that or not is on them, because we've been taught that white is angelic and Black is smut and nothing. Or we wear white to weddings and Black to funerals. We got to get out of that mental side. We got to get out of that, and we got to get out of that immediately. But that comes down to a choice. And at this point, either you're proactive and you want to liberate, or you're going to be reactive and play the victim. And I don't know why they're doing this to me. And it's today's society, the choices are infinite. Is it a red pill or the blue pill? I know this is not a movie, this is not the Matrix, but that analogy works just the same.
So in closing, tell our audience how to get your books, how to contact you if they got questions or concerns when it comes to this wonderful liberated world that we're about to create.
You can catch me on Facebook, Marlon L. Johnson, EDD. I'm not a big social media guy. I do have an Instagram, on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. Both of my books are on Amazon. All you got to do is type in DCSN or Freedom, Choice, and Responsibility, and it will pop up. Like I said, the book is very, very straightforward. It's very direct. Some say it's tough to digest, but it is a very good, enjoyable read. It will challenge you. It is very thought-provoking, but I guarantee you will learn from it. And if you take, I guess, the red pill, it will take you to the next level to success from inside and out.
Well, there you have it, everyone. I'm glad that you all joined us tonight. You will be able to see Dr. Johnson again. We're having a special on the 13th of March that's going to be entitled The State of Black America. We will create a new agenda. We will build a new agenda because we will build a new Black world. You all have a great night, have a great evening, and thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful night, and thank you again, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. King. You have a good night, and have a good night, everyone.
All right.